its ties with China and maintains connections with Russia, the country finds itself at a crossroads. The strategic choices made by Bulgarian leadership in the coming years will not only shape its own future, but could also have profound implications for the European Union and the broader geopolitical landscape. Bulgaria's reliance on Russia for energy has historically tied the two nations together, and its slow pivot toward alternative energy sources marks a significant departure from its past policies. The termination of key agreements with Russian energy firms, particularly those related to the Belene nuclear power project, signals a growing awareness within Bulgaria of the risks tied to overdependence on Moscow. However, breaking these ties has been neither simple nor comprehensive. Bulgaria's aging infrastructure and lack of a cohesive national energy strategy have posed considerable obstacles to transitioning toward renewable energy and more diversified energy sources. Efforts to lessen energy dependency on Russia have been bolstered by European Union initiatives. Brussels has offered financial aid and technical support to member states to assist them in diversifying their energy sources. Bulgaria has responded by importing more natural gas from Azerbaijan and exploring liquefied natural gas (LNG) options through Greece. These efforts, while promising, have been slowed by domestic political instability. Successive caretaker governments have been unable to enact consistent long-term policies, stalling essential investments in renewable energy and infrastructure development. Without significant progress in these areas, Bulgaria remains vulnerable during this transitional phase. This vulnerability has led Bulgaria to look elsewhere for economic partnerships, particularly toward China. In recent years, China's influence in the Balkans has grown, with Bulgaria becoming one of its focal points. Chinese investments in infrastructure, technology, and telecommunications have presented themselves as attractive alternatives to both Russian and European Union initiatives. For Bulgaria, these investments represent a potential lifeline, offering opportunities to modernize infrastructure and diversify its economic relationships. However, this growing partnership with China has raised red flags in Brussels. European Union officials have expressed concerns over the long-term implications of Chinese investments. Critics warn that these deals often come with hidden costs, such as higher debt burdens, compromises on EU procurement standards, and challenges to European values. Bulgaria's warming ties with Beijing could strain its already fragile relationship with the EU, creating additional hurdles in its integration into European structures. Bulgaria's internal political instability has compounded these challenges. Over the past 3 years, the country has held 7 parliamentary elections, reflecting deep fractures in its political landscape. This turbulence has undermined Bulgaria's ability to pursue coherent domestic policies and effectively represent its interests within the European Union. The presence of caretaker governments, which are temporary solutions rather than lasting leadership, has exacerbated this instability. These governments have struggled to address critical issues, such as judicial reform, anti-corruption measures, and economic development. One of the clearest examples of this dysfunction lies in Bulgaria's stalled efforts to meet the requirements for Eurozone membership. Joining the Eurozone demands adherence to strict fiscal discipline, legal reforms, and institutional development. Bulgaria's repeated failure to implement these measures has widened the gap between itself and the EU's core values. Corruption remains a significant issue, with opaque judicial systems and a lack of transparency undermining public trust in Bulgarian institutions. These challenges have not only eroded confidence domestically, but have also weakened Bulgaria's integration into the European framework. This marginalization has fueled skepticism toward the European Union among certain segments of the Bulgarian population. Many Bulgarians, particularly in rural areas and among older generations, view EU demands for reforms as intrusive and disconnected from their everyday lives. This sentiment has created an opening for Russia to present itself as a more dependable partner. Moscow has skillfully exploited these vulnerabilities, leveraging historical and cultural ties to cultivate goodwill among Bulgarians. The Kremlin's narrative portrays Russia as a respectful ally that values Bulgaria's sovereignty, in contrast to the perceived heavy-handedness of Brussels. Bulgaria's pivot toward Russia challenges the European Union's broader strategy of countering Russian influence in Eastern Europe. The EU has invested heavily in strengthening democratic institutions and promoting transparency in post-communist nations. But Bulgaria's recent actions suggest these efforts have not fully succeeded. The Bulgarian government has resisted several EU policies aimed at isolating Russia economically and diplomatically. Despite sanctions and attempts to diversify energy sources, Bulgaria has continued to rely on Russian energy, exposing the limitations of the EU's influence in the region. The European Union's response to these developments has been inconsistent. While Brussels has imposed sanctions on Russia and encouraged energy diversification, it has not adequately addressed internal divisions among its member states. The focus on punitive measures against Russia has sometimes overshadowed the need to strengthen EU institutions and support vulnerable member states like Bulgaria. This oversight has allowed Russia to exploit fractures within the Union, challenging the EU's ability to maintain stability and project power along its eastern borders. Bulgaria's increasing alignment with Russia and its emerging ties with China reflect a deeper crisis within the European Union. The inability to reconcile the diverse needs of its member states has allowed political instability and economic stagnation in countries like Bulgaria to persist. If the EU fails to address these underlying issues, it risks losing influence in Eastern Europe. This would not only weaken its position against external threats like Russia, but also undermine its credibility as a champion of democratic governance and the rule of law. The stakes for the European Union are high. Bulgaria's shifting alliances and its struggle to meet EU norms highlight the challenges of maintaining unity among a diverse group of member states. To counter these trends, the EU must act decisively, strengthening its commitment to all member states, particularly those facing economic and political challenges, will be essential to preventing further fragmentation. This includes addressing the root causes of instability in countries like Bulgaria, such as corruption, judicial reform, and energy dependency. At the same time, Bulgaria's leadership must carefully navigate its relationships with Russia, the European Union, and China. Striking a balance between these competing influences will require a coherent national strategy and stable governance. Bulgaria's choices will not only determine its own trajectory, but could also serve as a bellwether for the broader geopolitical dynamics in Eastern Europe. The European Union's ability to respond effectively to Bulgaria's shifting alliances will be a test of its resilience and adaptability. Ensuring that all member states feel supported and included in the European project will be crucial to maintaining unity and countering external threats. For Bulgaria, aligning its future with the EU's core values of democracy, transparency, and solidarity will be essential to securing its place within the European framework. The coming years will reveal whether Bulgaria and the European Union can rise to these challenges and build a more cohesive and stable future.